We welcome in Bryant West. Bryant, always a pleasure to have you. We dove into Keegan Murray's film quite a bit yesterday, and that coincided very nicely with the fact you posted a draft profile on Keegan Murray over at thekingsherald.com. Let's start where Kenny and I were kind of in agreement, but we were wording it differently. Where are we on Keegan Murray on the defensive end?
I think he's too big, too long, too smart to be anything less than a solid defender on a good defensive team. Emphasis there on the good defensive team part. I don't think he's suddenly going to come in and save a terrible defense. I don't think he's going to come in and be a massive difference maker. He's not going to come in and be Marcus Smart. But he's just he's switchable to an extent. He's a good rim protector, not great. I think his block rate probably overstates that case a little bit. Just overall, he's too smart a player, and like he's fully engaged on defense. I know I told you this yesterday. For a guy who averaged 23.5 points, grabbed 8.5 rebounds, had a 30% usage rate, like seeing a guy go out there and get 1.3 steals and 1.9 blocks per game, you just don't see that in college basketball. You just don't see a guy with that level of two-way production. And more than anything, that just speaks to Keegan Murray's motor on the defensive end. So many guys that we talk about in this draft class, they go out there, they put their heart and soul into the offense because they know that's how they're going to get drafted. That's not what Keegan Murray was doing. He showed up on both ends of the court. And while I do think some of his highlights and some of his statistics do overstate how good he's going to be defensively at the NBA level at higher speed against bigger opponents, I do think he's going to be a solid defender.
So here, just Kenny, I want to recap where we are. I've got him as good. Mm-hmm. Kenny's got him as not bad. And I've got him as solid. That's where we are with Keegan Murray on the defensive end. I think the highest praise comes from Bryant, and so it's Bryant, me, and then Kenny with solid, good, not bad.
Yeah, not bad. It's not bad.
I imagine Matt George is going to be on here in an hour and have a more optimistic take than that. So we'll see.
Okay, let me try and summarize it here. So I look at Al Horford, maybe not right now, even though he's playing really well on the defensive end right now, considering all things considered. But, take like prime out, the first go around with the Celtics, Al Horford. I look at him as really good at that power forward position, being able to do a lot of things on the defensive end. Is Keegan Murray that? Potentially.
He could be. I do like that comp. I think the main thing is that Keegan's shorter and nowhere near as strong as Al Horford. But I remember Al Horford at Florida. He made his money, got drafted because he was a smart defender who pretty quickly showed that he is a big man who can do a heck of a lot of things on defense. Keegan Murray has a long way to go to be prime Al Horford, but the number one thing when we talk about these guys like this who aren't going to overwhelm you with their tool set, Keegan Murray's just too smart. I fully trust that he's going to make the most of his NBA career. He's going to figure out his own limitations. He's going to figure out how to work around them. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, he's going to be like Al Horford, because Al Horford in his prime was, I don't know if he ever won an all defensive team nod, but he certainly was up there. So
is he the best defensive player of the crop, so to speak, of the group that the Sacramento Kings have an opportunity to draft? Al Horford, by the way, all defensive second team in 2018.
Thanks for looking at that.
Is Keegan Murray the best defensive player of
if
the group?
If you're just talking about the ones in the immediate conversation, Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray, Hayden Sharp, yes. Yeah, he is. I think you have to see either Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith Jr. fall to be there. I think Keegan Murray's probably a better defender right now than Paolo Banchero, although I think a lot of Paulo's issues were focus on the defensive end, which wasn't a thing for Murray. So maybe in a year or two with the right defensive coach, Paulo's better. But
you mean on the defensive end by Duke?
Yeah.
Or focus on Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure you were trashing Duke. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. Oh, don't you worry about it. I'm going to have a Paulo Banchero article out next week, and I have not been a fan of Duke in the last couple of years, how they've been running these prospects. So, I think of the guys that we're having the conversation with about Sacramento, unless somebody falls, he's the best defender, and he'll help this team. He's just not going to solve everything.
So when you talk about not being able to solve everything, what's I know defensively what you mean, but just as a prospect, like what are some of the concerns that you have with Keegan Murray? Like, is it a lower ceiling? What are some of the concerns that you have with him?
I think the number one thing is there are some moments where he was pretty dang good against guards, but I think those got overstated in some of his highlight packages. I don't think that he has the foot speed to guard down against guys. Not that he's ever going to be like hunted on the defensive end, but his defensive versatility is somewhat more limited than I think the draft hype of, hey, this guy might go 4. He's the best defender in this group might indicate. And like he had some incredibly impressive help blocks there, but if you just look at that 1.9 blocks, I think that may overstate his case as a rim protector, because we're not talking about a 6'11 dude. We're talking about a 6'8 guy. And, that doesn't make blocks any less impressive, but a lot of his blocks just came from either ISO situations where a guy was driving on him and just his long arms let him get there, or he comes over from behind a guy and swats him away. And, neither of those things I think are going to be as automatic at the next level. Mm-hmm. When he gets put on primary wing scorers, I think he'll do fine, but I'm not expecting him to suddenly turn into Ron Artest.
What's his best attribute as a player, offensively or defensively? What's his best attribute?
I think to me, it's his shooting. 39% from deep on 4.7 attempts. Like I fully buy in on that. 38% on catch and shoot shots. His stroke is smooth. It's quick when he's pulling off the catch. I think to me, the swing skill for him, and I really wrote about this in my piece, is the dribble pull-up. Because if you just type in Keegan Murray highlights, you're going to see like 4 or 5 of his pull-up shots immediately. And that might indicate that, oh yeah, that's a locked-in shot. This guy's going to come in and be able to take guys off the dribble, get his shot whenever he wants. Because like 6'11 wingspan is going to let him get shots over guys, but his shot mechanics when it comes to pulling off the dribble is a bit more slow than if he's pulling off the catch, and he just didn't do it at any sort of volume where I'm going to be all in on it. He only took 41 off the dribble shots last year, which is just not that much considering how many offensive possessions he had. So if he comes into the league and suddenly that's the shot he's looking for all the time, I'm going to be a lot happier than I would be if he comes in and he's like, I'm a 6'8 guy who won a lot in college by banging in the low post or trying to drive one-on-one situations. I'm not sure that either one of those are going to be anything more than secondary offensive skills at this level. So it's shooting for me.
Do you think he has the ability to because I saw, in some of his highlights and everything too, he was doing some stuff on the block in the post in his own way, maybe not the way that you traditionally think. It feels like he could be a little bit of a 3-level scorer with what he can do on the block, mid-range, and then catch and shoot behind the 3. Do you think that he has that ability to post up and be effective inside as well in the NBA level, or is that a situation where, he's a bigger guy that feasted on college competition?
I think it's kind of both. I mean, he definitely was taking guys who aren't NBA competition into the paint. I mean, we could say that of anybody. That's not really a criticism. But there is going to be a transition to playing against NBA 4s and 5s. Mm-hmm. But to a certain extent, like, there's always going to be a value in having a big guy who in switches or against certain forwards can get some back to the basket work. And he's got good touch there. He's not just a guy who makes his money by being stronger and outpowering guys. Like, he's got good footwork. He's got good touch. He's got a good hook shot. I just don't see it as big a part of his game as it was at Iowa.
You're listening to Dealing with KC on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ HD2 Sacramento, an Odyssey station and driven by Lashers, Elk Grove, Dodge, Bryant West, the draft expert for the Kings Herald, joining us. There's one something I learned in your profile on Keegan Murray is that he was a kind of a bit of a late bloomer, so to speak. And
yeah,
that's sort of what I learned this elsewhere too. That's kind of what Jaden Ivey was. Like Jaden Ivey wasn't a big recruit, 3 years ago or whatever it was. What is there anything you can attribute that to, and perhaps more specifically, how all of a sudden they went from kind of late bloomers, low recruit guys to, it sounds like, both of them being top 5 picks in this upcoming NBA draft?
Well, I think it just has to do with evaluators are always going to miss on guys, and it just always speaks to the human nature of this sport. Like, guys are going to surprise us. Guys will always surprise us. Both of these guys went to good programs that really did kind of build parts of their offenses, certainly to an extent with Keegan. He was 90% of that offense around them in their sophomore year. They really took advantages. I think Keegan, like Luka Garza left last year, Iowa suddenly doesn't have any other go-to guy, and he really made the best of it. So yeah, he's going to be 22 before the NBA season starts. I don't really think I'm going to limit his ceiling because of that, but he took full advantage of it this year. And clearly there's also something in the water at Big Ten schools, because both Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey saw 10% jumps in their 3-point shots this year from their freshman to sophomore years. And that's too much of a coincidence to just let fly by.
All right, Bryant. So gotta ask the tough questions now. All right. I need the direct answers.
No more fluff, Bryant.
The top 3 go the way we thought it would go. Jaden Ivey's on the board. Keegan Murray's on the board. Who are you taking in that situation? We said all these nice things about Keegan, and it's all nice. But when we get down to the situation, when you're faced with Jaden Ivey or Keegan Murray, and you got to make a decision, what decision are you making?
I'm taking Jaden Ivey. It's not really even a hesitation in my mind. I think, there is a real conversation to be had about fit versus talent, especially when it comes to the Sacramento Kings, because, in basketball hell, it is harder to ignore fit complications. Keegan Murray has less swing skills that he needs to hit to be a very good player in this league than Jaden Ivey does. He's a much better on paper fit with the Sacramento Kings team, but you watch Jaden Ivey, you can see what he's going to do every single night to get himself buckets. Keegan Murray, if he makes that pull-up shot a big part of his game, I think he could be a very solid 3rd, 4th starter. But Jaden Ivey could be a top 25 player in this league. I'm not saying that about Keegan Murray, and I like Keegan Murray. So it's a pretty easy decision for me.
Can you refresh my memory? Were you ever Shaedon Sharpe guy?
No. To me, if you're going to,
sorry, Ken. He that with an attitude.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to have. I keep hearing all of these draft experts now coming out like he's not going to be in my top 10. No, Shaedon Sharpe's going to be pretty high in my lottery. But to me, if you're going to be going for this upside swing guy who's got elite skill set, who's got elite tools, Jaden Ivey's been doing it for 2 years now at Purdue. So it to me, there's nothing that Shaedon Sharpe has that Jaden Ivey doesn't have except for 2 inches of height.
I disagree with that one, Brian. Disagree with that one. But we've seen Jaden Ivey on
Yelp videos that he's watching.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even got to be that. I look at the workout, and I don't see the same skill set. I see both of them having things that there's certain things that one can do that the other can't.
Yeah, I didn't mean they're identical prospects. I just mean like if you're going for an upside swing, if you want to go for a star, Jaden Ivey is much more proven at the level that he's played at.
The other aspect of this situation with Ivy, Keegan Murray, those two guys, I look at them and I try to remind myself, I look at them as guys where I don't think either one of them will be the best player on a playoff team. I don't think either one of them will at any point, if everything goes well, be better than De'Aaron Fox or Domantas Sabonis. But to me, that's a bit of a positive, because if I'm looking at Keegan or Jaden Ivey to come save my franchise, I feel like I'm going to be disappointed. I don't think they're those type of talents. But if I'm saying, hey, I need you to be the solid, reliable third, maybe fourth best player on my team, I think they could achieve that, maybe overachieving that. Now you're looking at something good. So the biggest thing with me is you need them to fit that role, and you need Fox and Sabonis to be who they're supposed to be. And that's the way you get the most out of this draft pick. Because I don't see either one of those two guys being your best player at any point.
I would say that I think there's a better chance that Jaden Ivey is the best player on a playoff team than Keegan Murray, but I agree with you that if this team, whichever one of those two guys the Kings would draft, I don't project either one of them to mean more to this franchise in a year or two than De'Aaron Fox or Sabonis. And I think one thing about Jaden Ivey kind of gets overblown is that he's not going to come in and demand this incredibly high number of touches. Yeah, he led Purdue in touches, but he played off the ball so much more last year than I think a lot of people really identify with. Like, he had 141 catch and shoot shots last year. This isn't a guy who just waited for the ball to come back to him and then needed to dribble the air out of the ball. Like, he worked in the flow of a pretty good offense, could have been improved. But I think that with a smart coach, and Lord knows I've been preaching this for 2 years, Sacramento Kings aren't going to be a great offensive team until they have multiple guys who can handle the ball, who can create with the ball, and they have the right coach who can figure it out and make them balance the workload between them. Because for all we saw last year, the difficulties we saw between De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, I'm just going to sit here and be like, I honestly, truly believe De'Aaron Fox can work with another ball handler if the right coach, an actual NBA head coach, can sit there and be like, we got to figure this out together because this team ain't going anywhere if you are the only guard that can handle this ball.
One thing that I kind of keep getting hung up on, especially in the last week and some change, Bryant, is it feels like a lot of people really like Jaden Ivey. Not just here in Sacramento, but people who cover the league. They seem to really like Jaden Ivey. But it's like that top three is impenetrable. Like, if, you know, Kenny and I, we talk about these player comps all of the time. And I don't, was it Jabari Smith? That was LaMarcus Aldridge. Was that Jabari?
Yeah.
But with Jaden Ivey, we're talking Russell Westbrook and Dwayne Wade. Okay. If that is, if you legitimately mean that, and that's your projection, how the hell is his top spot 4?
Yeah. I fully agree with what you're getting at here. It's absolutely possible that we've all just spent all this time on Jaden Ivey and he goes in the top 3. It is absolutely possible. Yeah, I definitely think it's a possibility. Okay. If you're going to ask me which one of those top 3 guys falls, I'm going to have no clue, because there's no logic. Like, I can't sit here and be like, here's why Chet Holmgren is going to fall. Here's why Jabari Smith going to fall. One of those 4 guys is going to fall. Which one? I'm not going to bet on that. I think it's most likely Jaden Ivey, but like, I'm not betting my house on that. So it definitely could be one of those power forwards falls. One of those power forwards falls. Take any one of them.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that's what I keep coming back to here. This is a 4-player draft in my mind. There are 4 really, really good players here. All of them who have either, top 2 on a really, really good team upside. Just take one of them. Don't overcomplicate this.
Yeah. Well,
Motto of the Sacramento Kings.
There's a great chance if they keep the pick and they make the pick that they're gonna get a really good ball player. You know, well, that's what I keep saying. Like, I keep using the word, and maybe this isn't the phrase, and maybe this isn't fair, or it's a little dangerous. But what could possibly go wrong?
Why do you say that in Sacramento?
You make the pick of 4. What could possibly go wrong? You're gonna get you a good ball player, man. That's where I say don't overthink it. Like, unless you're getting an all-star back in return in a trade or anything like that, I mean, just make the pick. Make the pick.
And here's the most important thing to me. Even if Monty McNair has trade ideas for the number 4 pick, even if they are for really damn good proven players who will help this team a lot quicker than any of these rookies, I really just hope that he waits until the Kings are on the clock so he can see who is there before he makes those trades. Because player X from whatever team may or may not be better than Jaden Ivey, but they may or may not be better than Jabari Smith, who may fall to 4, or Chet Holmgren, or Paulo Banchero. I want, if the Kings are going to trade the pick, they can trade the pick, but wait until you see who's there and then assess.
The Chicago Bulls want to instigate a sign and trade for Zach LaVine in exchange for that number 4 pick. You doing it? And other stuff, Rashawn.
And other stuff.
Other stuff.
I turned heel on half the damn roster yesterday.
Oh, my God.
It all went bad. I turned on De'Aaron. I turned on Rashawn. It was just a terrible day for me. But this is part of the conversation. Zach LaVine, there seems to be, for whatever reason, a growing noise that he's potentially out in Chicago. And I'm assuming a sign and trade means 5 and 2-12. So what do you think?
You know, that's one of those ones I'm going to wait. If it's Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren or maybe even Paulo Banchero, I'm going to really hesitate to pull that trade. But like Jaden Ivey is, you're lucky if Jaden Ivey becomes Zach LaVine. Well, lucky's the wrong word. If Jaden Ivey becomes Zach LaVine, you are really, really happy, and it's going to take a long time for him to get there. Yeah. So yeah, I think Zach in that situation, you immediately made me think of when the Kings almost signed him a couple of years ago, and then he went back to Chicago and he was like, "I'm so glad you guys signed me. I didn't want to go to Sacramento." Wondering if he really likes that idea now, but you know, he'd be a good fit here.
He'd absolutely.
You guys are starting to move me on moving to 4 for Zach LaVine. I was vehemently against it yesterday, but I don't know.
Well, that was ridiculous. You and James and your little Rashawn and Harrison, that was absurd.
That's how we're gonna start the conversation.
You should be ashamed of
yourself. That was starting the conversation. We ain't gonna just try and give away the 4.
Bryant, you are tremendous. Thank you as always, my friend. We greatly appreciate you. Please head over to thekingsherald.com. Check out his most recent profile on Keegan Murray. Got another one on Paulo Banchero coming up.